Are you ready, kids? Get your parents' permission, check your mailbox, and grab your shopping cart. It's time for the Adventures in Collecting podcast.
I'm Eric.
And I'm Dave. Welcome to Adventures in Collecting, where we talk toy news, culture, and hauls,
along with our journeys as collectors.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Adventures in Collecting.
You didn't say everyone. You went with everybody today.
Oh, did I screw up my own thing?
Well, no, but it's, I didn't say hi, so I just did.
Throwing everybody for a curveball today. You know what we want.
Hello, everyone. That's usually it.
It's kind of like when I
started doing it in the videos too. Actually, from talking that loudly, my I just popped a vocal cord. No, I didn't.
I like to think of it as kind of like a gentle like engine rev on the hello everybody. Like it kind of like it just kind of comes in on you. That's the way that it always works out in my head. But you know what we're not going to do, Dave?
We're not going to bury the lead.
That's right. We are back with another guest this week. I guess we're super excited to have launched on Kickstarter in 2019. Plunderlings have been the 1/12 scale indie toy darling since they started arriving in backers' hands. Now that they've rolled out to fan channel retailers and toy stores, they continue to charm collectors now the world over. With a second Kickstarter on the horizon, ready to introduce us to new characters in the world of Plunderlings, joining us on the pod is Ricky from Plunderlings. Ricky, welcome to Adventures in Collecting.
Wow, no, thank you for having me. Thank you for that intro.
Again, we're excited to have you. Both we have experienced Plunderlings, but some of our guests are also huge Plunderlings fans. We've had Jay Hernandez and our buddy Craig. It's just they kind of wow everybody that gets their hands on them.
I believe you also got Khalil into them, Eric.
I did. Yes, that's right. Khalil of course of Caster's Corner. I blame Jay for it. Jay and Jared over at Toy Bro. They posted some initial pictures, and Jay, of course, having them balance on everything and showing how they move. They really are wonderful. So we're super excited to have you.
Well, thanks. Yeah, I blame Jay for a lot of my purchasing mistakes. So
he is kind of the ultimate enabler.
Right.
He is definitely a purchasing enabler, which is why Jay rules.
Kind of with everything. It's like anything he decides to buy and pose is immediately like, I think I might need that now.
Right. Yeah, he managed to get so much personality out of his toys.
It makes it cooler, like having somebody you trust.
So the first question that we ask all of our guests before we kind of jump into the main topic here is, what are you currently collecting?
I don't really collect any specific lines. I don't know if I should admit that. I just kind of pick and choose interesting designs and characters that I come across. And I'm excited that a lot of other toy companies are doing original stuff now, like Super 7's The Worst, Mezco's Rumble Society, Toy Pizza's Nice as a Slice. Because I get excited about seeing just new stuff and new designs out there. But I also pick up some like stuff from my childhood, like Saint Seiya, Dragon Ball, Star Wars, Marvel, which a lot of times are by Bandai, Mayfix, or Sentinel.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of really cool original IPs out there that aren't. It's kind of like it feels almost like there's really kind of two rules right now, where it's what's old is new again, and then you have companies like Plunderlings, like some of the ones you mentioned, that are producing these kind of new and original characters. And it's been a while since we've had that.
Yeah, for sure. No, I think it's really important that we keep supporting new stuff. Like I also fall into kind of the nostalgia chasing, but I try to catch myself a little bit because I think it's important that we support new ideas, because if not, kind of culture gets a little stuck, right? And I think it's important to allow new things to exist as well.
So, how did you get involved in designing toys?
Yeah, I'm not sure if I'm consider myself a toy designer yet. The sculptor is Sebastian Dominguez. He's a really talented young CG sculptor who's from Argentina that we were really lucky to collaborate with. But with action figures in general, I always grew up loving action figures and buying them. And I have a younger brother, and I used to use him to justify buying toys until I was like a teenager. And anyway, so uh, the way we would play with them was like do like world building and storytelling with them, and mix different figures from different shows just to like make up new stories. So that's been something I've always done, and I've always loved the toy just for the toy. It didn't have to be from something, or I didn't know what it was from. But I usually work in film, in post production, VFX, animation, because of the storytelling aspect. And I thought that maybe eventually, I'd be part of something animated that would have a toy line secretly. But then I saw what Jason from Spiro did. I don't know if you know Animal Warriors of the Kingdom. He did a Kickstarter before mine, and it was successfully funded. And I was thinking that maybe I could skip the whole part where I needed to find and work on an animation to be able to make a toy. I can just jump straight to the toy part, which is the part I was really excited about. So we got a 3D printer at the studio, started doing tests, uploading images to Instagram. And one day Robo saw it. I think someone tagged him, and he mentioned on a Foosh Weekly, and that was kind of the confidence that we needed to actually try to make it, because we got a bunch of new backers, or we got a lot of support from that we thought maybe we can get backers out of it. So it's kind of a happy accident, but it was, it's been really fulfilling, and I hope that we can keep making toys, forever. And that's why I'm always going to be in debt to the Kickstarter backers for having let it happen.
Yeah, I mean, there's been a really fun groundswell of crowdfunding, with indie toy projects. Whether it's yours, whether it's the Animal Warriors of the Kingdom that you had mentioned. There's been a bunch, and it's fun to see these kind of these new and independent projects kind of take advantage of this groundswell. And I think there's just a kind of a real hunger out there for new stuff.
Yeah, I hope that we can keep seeing more of it. Again, like I like the stuff from my childhood, just as much as everyone else. But I like the idea of also having new toys exist.
So speaking of new ideas, where did the idea of Plunderlings actually come from?
Well, I grew up in Venezuela, and the studio is currently based in the Dominican Republic. And as I, usually had these figures, or we play with them and pose them in kind of more tropical environments. And also, there's always like these stores that sold like little trinkets and stuff like that. And if they had the right scale, like little wooden jaguars, I would also play with them and add them to the mix. So I always liked science fiction, fantasy through books and comics and TV. So um, I don't know. I always felt like the fantasy world specifically was always kind of focused on sort of like a Eurocentric kind of background, kind of like Lord of the Rings or Harry Potter, Elder Scrolls, more recently Game of Thrones. That are always like castles, woods, mountainous landscapes. So I always thought it'd be cool to have a fantasy universe that takes place in a more a different sort of environment, sort of like dense rainforest or a tropical beach. So that's kind of where the idea started. I guess the idea was to make a world where everyone was a pirate, and instead of dragons, we had giant iguanas, where exploration, discovery was kind of the goal, not kind of this like trope of like defending them, your homeland from an invasion. And yeah, overall, I just like to see more fantasy and science fiction, from Latin America. And I was hoping to, if we can be a small part of that, that would be awesome. I don't know if that comes through on the toy, but that's kind of where the idea started.
Well, I mean that pirate vibe is like between the pirate vibe and then with the fawns kind of having that kind of like mythic creature element to it. They definitely look like they crawled out of the jungle. Like I think you nailed that aesthetic of it.
Great. No, I'm glad. I also want to keep them colorful, and yeah, and also and we're also trying to build like a universe where there's no like humans versus the monsters, which is kind of like everybody's a monster.
Yeah, and I think that's really cool too, because it's, it makes it even more immersive. There's just something about seeing like a pack of them, like like a bunch of them all together. Especially in some of like the animations that you guys have created to kind of support the line as well.
Yeah, they're just very fun looking. Like they look like they're, yes, getting into like quote unquote trouble, but not in like the fun kind of like, like Saturday morning cartoon trouble, which I think is, it's, it's toys, it's ideal, right? Like that's the idea where they came from, is like a whole, Saturday morning cartoon thing. So that, you know, this kind of really pulls up that vibe.
Yeah, fun was definitely the North Star on this project. All the decisions that we made were always kind of centered around, well, what would be the funnest solution to whatever problem we were trying to fix.
So let's talk about the process. How did the first Plunderling go from sketch to physical toy?
It went through a ton of iterations, and we've been uploading images and different ideas. Like I think back in 2016, and the Kickstarter wasn't launched till 2019. But I was really particular about trying to get the joints and the silhouettes right. I think maybe working in the animation industry, I took some of those lessons and tried to apply it to a toy a little bit, trying to get them looking appealing, have them move in organic ways, be able to, have expressive poses. But the whole manufacturing aspect, that was totally new to us. So I was really lucky to meet Chris Gowridge from Four Horsemen. He's our production manager, and he sees a lot of the Four Horsemen work. And it was great to be able to troubleshoot things with him. I think we'd be in a really different place right now if we didn't have him involved.
Yeah, Four Horsemen Studios is technically like a half hour away from where we live here in New Jersey. So we're very familiar with their product as well.
No, they make amazing stuff. They're really inspiring, especially talking about original lines. They make a lot of original stuff that's really mind blowing.
Yeah, and I mean you can tell it's funny hearing you say that, with the animation background. It's something that kind of didn't dawn on me until you just made that point. But like looking at them and like looking at where the joint cuts are and where the points of articulation are, there are these just kind of like little bits of subtle movement that you can get out of them that almost feel like it's some, like I can picture an animator using one of these as kind of like a model, right? Like when they're sitting there drawing, like using this to kind of get poses and kind of get, natural looking movement, because of all those kind of just subtle little articulation points.
Yeah, definitely. The idea was to just get the articulation that was necessary for the character to be able to do what you would want that character to do. It's a little hard to explain, but that was kind of one of the ideas about keeping the articulation to a certain to not put too many points of movement either, because I think that can be a problem. To just have the right amount that the character can kind of organically pose and fall into certain expressions without too much work. That's where we're going for, at least. Whether we got there or not is a different question. But we were definitely thinking about what's the least amount of articulation to get him to do everything that you would want him to do.
So, as our good friend Jay would say, these Johns can move. And since we're talking about articulation and talking about that kind of point of whether there's drawing the line between too much articulation and not enough, what were some of like the considerations that you took into actually designing the articulation system and making sure that you were kind of towing that line?
Yeah, again, I feel like the character kind of, or like whatever you think that character is, kind of defines the movement a little bit. But I don't know. Usually, within the first 30 seconds of picking up a toy, I know if I'm gonna kind of like it or not. Between like the weight and the way it moves, that it moves in a way that's organic, that doesn't feel like you're fighting it, that they just kind of, fall into their poses. That was something that I really, worked on trying to get right with the toy. Again, like, whether we totally hit that mark is something that we talked about. That was definitely something that was being thought about a lot. And also, and I personally really dislike kind of spinning parts. It's a little difficult to explain, but also with the idea of like having a figure in your pocket, that when you take it out, is it going to be like a mess? Like, are you going to have to spend time rotating parts to make everything line up again? Or does it like maintain a certain level of anatomy? Like even like a boot cut, like I don't hate a boot cut, but at the same time, like I have a really hard time pointing my toe in a different direction than my knee, you know? Like, and so how much do I really need my toy to do that? And how much, how many options then does it become too much? And does the posing become more of a chore than something fun? And again, everything kind of comes back to the fun aspect.
So one of the things that makes Plunderlings so unique is their presentation and their magnetic elements. So tell us a bit about how you came up with the packaging and the choice to put magnets in their heads.
Yeah, I mean, I wish I could take credit for like doing the first magnetic hat, but I think Palisades did some with their Muppet figures. Mezco did it with Popeye, but it started off with like kind of deciding uh, how to design the hats, because putting a peg in the head was definitely a non-starter because of how much it would break the sculpt and make it uglier. So when we started doing tests with magnets, we kind of discovered how fun it was to kind of swap and stack hats. And it actually opened up a lot of design aspects that we can make hats in totally different shapes. Like they didn't have to be form fitted to the head. Like we have one toy that has like a little crown as a hat, and that would have been really difficult to do if it needed to kind of like fit around the head. So that was that decision was kind of made on the fun aspect. It definitely wasn't a cost cutting factor, but it was worth it because it made it more fun. And then about the boxes, yeah, I'm going to be redundant, but the idea was that since we kind of thought about it being fun first and foremost, we wanted to make sure the box kind of communicated that, and that kind of happy face was the kind of the best way that we could kind of figure out how to do that. We worked with Adir. He's known as a Wanted Rabbit on Instagram, and he helped us design the boxes. A lot of them are compared to Boglins, which actually I didn't think about until after people started pointing it out. The one original idea I think that maybe we could take credit for, I'd love to be proven wrong. Maybe someone did it before, but was the hatchling bodies. I don't know if you know about those, but we sell these little kind of baby bodies that you put your extra hands and heads on them. And again, as a collector, I have drawers full of hands and heads and accessories that I don't know what they're from anymore. And I think I saw like a loose head from like Perfect Cell Figuarts kind of laying around. I kind of thought how cool it would be to have like a little Cell Junior body. I don't know if you watch Dragon Ball, but
Yep.
yes. And so that just kind of was an idea that I had in the back of my head that all of a sudden when working on Plunderlings, kind of came up again. And Seba did an awesome job figuring out how to make a tiny body that could fit the proportional heads and hands of the figure. So I was really excited about that. I felt like it was really a solution for a very specific collector problem that I was experiencing, and and that it's more fun to have those bits and pieces on display than getting lost between your collection.
In a bag or a tote somewhere.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, just somewhere random.
So we've mentioned a couple times kind of this idea of world building and kind of fun focused play first, kind of mashing worlds together. That being said, Plunderlings they fit incredibly well into existing 112 scale collections. How did you determine that 112 was the scale that you wanted to create in?
Yeah, exactly. That sort of mixing and matching that would kind of happen with my figures from a young age. I was always very scale conscious. I think when I was a little older, the first toys more modern toys that really kind of blew my mind were the Toy Biz's Marvel versus Capcom toys and their Ocarina of Time stuff. That all kind of skew around 6-inch, maybe not exactly, but so once we started thinking about making the action figure, the 6-inch scale was kind of a no brainer, since that's kind of what I imagine a figure to look like.
And now, a word from our sponsors. And now, back to the show.
Now, one of the things that's cool too about them, I don't know whether it was a happy accident or not, but I love seeing people do like the head swaps, like putting Plunderling heads on other 1/12 scale figures. Was that something that you guys had kind of taken into consideration when you were designing peg size and port size and things?
Yeah, I'm not sure if there's some sort of legal repercussion for making things compatible with lines that aren't mine, but we definitely wanted to make it as standard as possible. For example, like the grip sizes and stuff like that, so that it could go into a playset. And we always thought about how they would be really fun to kind of mix and match with your Ninja Turtles or Master of the Universe type fantasy world.
Yeah, and toy photographers are totally doing that, and it's so much fun to see it. Like there's times when I see it, and I think like, oh, I never thought to put this with that, right? And then all of a sudden I'm seeing it pop up in the toy photography feed, and it's just unbelievable.
Yeah, no, I'm really blown away with what people are doing. I never imagined that the level of creativity people have and the dioramas they build. They've really taken it to a level that I don't think we ever could have gotten to that level.
So the Kickstarter campaign, extremely successful, and it nearly doubled the funding goal. Did you anticipate that level of success going in?
No, not even a little bit. I mean, like I kept thinking, like, what are those people thinking? I've never made a toy before. Like they're crazy. No, I'm kidding. But it was really, really humbling, and the amount of trust that the toy community put in me. Like I felt it the day Robo talked about the product, that I was like, okay, now he put his trust in us, and we got to make sure this toy ends up being as good as we can possibly make it, to make good on that promise. So definitely not anticipated, and definitely taken on with a heavy burden to make sure that that we were delivering a quality product.
So with a Kickstarter, I mean, one of the things that's kind of most known is those stretch goals and everything. With a campaign that was that successful, were you guys like scrambling to come up with new stretch goals, or did you have kind of a bunch planned and didn't think that you're going to have to pull them out?
Well, there was a lot planned. I think honestly, the stretch goals were too easily achievable, just in terms of like what the tooling ended up costing was a little bit unexpected. Since making stretch goals was really exciting, and I saw that people would get excited by them. I think if anything, maybe we did too many stretch goals. With our first campaign ever, we did 16 different figures. It was just like, even logistically, it was really a really interesting challenge. So there was a ton of stretch goals planned out, but a lot of stuff were made up during the campaign. For example, even the hatchling idea, that was something that came up during the campaign. That wasn't something that we had already made.
With that Kickstarter now, in the rearview mirror, and you guys have been teasing a lot on your Instagram feed. Tell us a little bit about what we can expect from this next Kickstarter.
Well, the next Kickstarter is for the Plunder Long and the Plunder Strong. I really wish that I could say a launch date. Maybe by the time this airs, I'll already have a launch date published. It just keeps getting pushed back a week and another week. But the good part is that we've really play tested these and put them through the paces, and we should be able to get them to production a lot quicker. So I'm excited about doing this, and more than anything, it's to figure out how many different variants to make. That's going to be the real purpose of the Kickstarter, to see how much enthusiasm there is, and figure out how many new variants to make of both the Plunder Long and the Plunder Strong. So we're excited to kind of share those and see the different characters that we've come up with.
So tell us a little bit about the two types of characters. So what are we looking at for a Plunder Strong, and what are we looking at for a Plunder Long?
Well, the Plunder Long and Plunder Strong, we're definitely trying to expand the Plunderverse and kind of build out different types of Plunder folk, if you will. We hope to keep, introducing more of the lore as we go along. So yeah, basically the Plunder Strong, I think, is pretty. Hopefully, you kind of understand what he's about just by looking at him. He's kind of an angry guy, big and hulking. He's gonna be a really thick, heavy toy. Yeah, if Plunderlings were happy, I definitely think the Plunder Strongs are angry. The Plunderlong's a little bit more complicated. let's see. Let's see how people react to him. But the way he's definitely kind of a middle child. He's kind of stuck between the sort of cute and scary looking toy. The idea with him is that maybe he's a little bit more of a tragic character, to say it like that. But hopefully people will warm up to him as well. The same way people have kind of come around on Waluigi and different kind of weirder characters.
Yeah, he's got that kind of like brooding, lanky look to him.
Yeah. I definitely think that he suffers a lot for kind of being stuck between the Plunderlings' mischief and the Plunderlings' beatings, Plunder Strong's beatings.
Like kind of like teenage Groot in a way.
Yeah. He's definitely working through some stuff, but he's got a happy face sculpt too. So he's a little more of a complex character, to say it like that. He's one of the characters I'm kind of more interested to see how how well accepted he is.
Now you said one of the things that you learned from the first Kickstarter was too many stretch goals. But you also said there were some things that kind of came up maybe on the fly or as you were kind of putting everything together. Um, is there a happy medium that you've kind of found going into this second crowdfunding experience?
Yeah, I think it's definitely a lot more advanced along the lines of being developed. There's stuff still being figured. There are things we didn't know with the Plunderlings that had to be figured out at the factory. So a lot of the engineering and the tooling is done for the base body. I'm confident that the turnaround will be quicker, but that's assuming that the supply chain issues don't continue to exasperate. And yeah, and then another concern that I have is that when the price of petroleum goes up, so does plastic. So it's kind of Kickstarter's a little hard because you're pricing for the future. But the idea is that we're always trying to make them as accessible as we can, So we don't make the same quantities as Mattel or Hasbro, so it's really hard to match their price. But again, since kind of the guiding star on this has always been fun, we know spending money isn't fun, so we want to try to make it as obtainable as we can.
You know what though, if there's one thing that we've learned and we've kind of understood about the collecting community is there's two types of collectibles. There's the mainstream ones and then there's the independent ones. And I think there's kind of this, I guess you could say, perceived notion that, a company like a Mattel, a Jazzwares, a Hasbro, Spin Master, even now to this point, like a Super 7 even, um, there are certain products that those companies put out that are mainstream products, and there's a dollar amount that I think people are used to spending, and I think they're willing to kind of extend the barriers on that dollar amount when it comes to an independent toy, especially if it's something that's delivering on a promise. I mean, you mentioned Four Horsemen. We mentioned Four Horsemen Studios before with their Mythic Legions line, and the figure Obscura Krampus that they put out, and Plunderlings. From you guys, I think there is a willingness to pay a little bit more for something that is a startup, that is independent, that is doesn't have the corporate machine behind it that some of the other bigger brands do. And I think, part of that's kind of awesome.
Yeah, one of the things that also needs to be taken into account is the tooling. The tooling is hundreds of thousands of dollars sometimes, so it's really expensive to make these steel tools to be able to mass produce stuff, and that cost has to get divided up in the amount of figures that you're making. And so if you're not making hundreds of thousands of figures, it's really hard to have that cost be divided up in a way that's cost effective. But there are advantages too to doing a smaller run. We can be more detail oriented. There's no retailer that's waiting on these things to hit market in time for a Marvel movie. So I think that was one of the advantages too, that we really got to troubleshoot things and figure things out and try to make the best decisions we could to make the best toy we could. So yeah, I'm glad that people are understanding, and I'm also glad that people were really understanding with the delays that we had with Plunderlings. And again, I don't anticipate any more of that, but it's also an advantage that when you're doing a smaller run, you can be a little bit more careful. What's made COVID's also made it difficult because going to the factory is basically impossible right now. So hopefully that's something that would be possible in the future, that I also think would speed things up.
Well, with that, let's kick it over to our Q&A. This segment is brought to you by our friends at Chubsy Wubsy Toys. A traditional mom-and-pop toy store in Little Falls, New Jersey, Chubsy Wubsy Toys brings you the best new toys from the brands you love without the hassle of pounding the pavement searching for them at larger retail stores. Visit them in person at 106 Main Street in Little Falls, New Jersey, or online at chubsywubsy.com. That's CHUBZYWUBZZY.com. And tell them Adventures in Collecting sent you. So our Q&A, we did a post. We did an Instagram. We posted
when you first started, I thought there was gonna be a Q&A song. Like, let's kick it over to the Q&A.
That's there is, Dave. That's where our ad plays. So there is.
Yeah. Well, you'll know that when you hear this.
So we posted on Instagram and to see if anyone had questions for you, and lo and behold, we had a couple of questions. So, Dave, why don't I start with the first one?
Sounds good.
So, at Ovieta209 asks, first off, Plunderlings are my favorite toys since I began collecting 2 years ago. Cool. My question is, will the Plunderstrong eventually have hatchlings like the Plunderlings to display the alternate heads and hands?
Yeah, we're trying to keep everything as cross-compatible as we can. So the idea is that they will, unfortunately, work with the hatchlings as well. They might look kind of funny because these are a lot less childlike faces on these baby bodies. But yes, they will work. And the idea is that you can use the same correct colored hatchlings with the corresponding Plunderlong, Plunderstrong, or Plunderling.
That's going to be adorable.
Yeah.
The little body with those giant Plunderstrong
Enormous
heads on
head.
it. Oh, it's going to be adorable. I want somebody to fashion a diaper.
There you go.
It's definitely funny looking.
Friend of the pod and recent guest at Toy Farce asks, will the Plunderlongs and Plunderstrongs be a part of the same Kickstarter campaign, or will they be separate?
No, we're going to put them together. I think the Plunderlong needs that Plunderstrong support to make it happen.
He's the heavy going into battle. He's
exactly.
Hey, you need to squat up,
I honestly I'm so excited for this. I cannot wait. I cannot wait for these giant things. All right. And the last question for our Q&A segment here is from at Johnny_C_Dagger asks, will the next Kickstarter be specifically for these two new character types, or will we also see Plunderlings as well?
This new Kickstarter is for the Plunderlong and the Plunderstrong. Plunderlings had their time to shine, and now these are new figures and have their own Kickstarter. we have a couple surprises along the way, but we won't be featuring any Plunderlings per se during this Kickstarter. So to not have that that kind of anticipation, it'd be just to clear that up.
So if when new Plunderlings come to come out for availability, they're going to, at this point, they would go straight into the storefront that you guys have, as well as the other retailers.
Yeah, that's likely. But again, right now we're just kind of focused on getting these new toys out there.
All right. Well, with that, you have survived the Q&A segment.
It's tough. I broke a sweat.
So, Dave, would you like to fulfill your role as this podcast's James Lipton and ask our final question?
Yes, I would. Our final question that we ask to all of our guests. What is your favorite and or strangest piece in your collection? It can be one of each, or it can be both.
All right. Well, favorite's kind of hard. I feel like I have like a rotating collection that, there's always a different toy in my desk. I think after the Plunder Strong, which is the one I've been messing with lately, the other one I keep picking up this past week has been Sentinel's Cutman. It's like a Mega Man figure from their 4-inch Nell line. I think some of the best Mega Man figures maybe ever made, but that's the one that I've been having a lot of fun posing and moving around. Weirdest, that's maybe even harder, because I buy a lot of figures just because I want to study their articulation, or I think they look cool and have no context for what they are. I recently got a Revoltech stag beetle. It's just like a giant beetle toy.
I saw that. I saw the ads for those on their Instagram.
Yeah. I had no idea what I'm going to do with it. I was just curious to see what it moved like and what it would pose like, and I wanted to get in hand. I mean, it's a great looking figure. I just really don't know where to even put this thing.
How big are those?
It's not the size of your fist or something.
Okay.
It's pretty big. It's and it basically looks like a big cockroach. So like, like I'm not really sure if I can put it like in the middle of my living room or something.
That's big enough for a Plunderling to throw a little rope around and ride around.
Right. That was definitely part of the reason why I got it, to test that out.
Yeah, that's interesting. I did see that they have a couple of different like insects and bugs and stuff, and Kyoto is very strange with their selection sometimes. But like, I saw those pictures come up, and at first I thought that their Instagram had been hacked, and that they were posting pictures. Somebody was posting just pictures of bugs, and then I realized that they were like these fully articulated insects.
No, it's absolutely gorgeous. But kind of talking about, again, it's a personal preference thing. But the articulation, all those ball joints, is definitely feels like a little bit of a chore to get them into interesting poses.
Well, I mean, that's one of the biggest critiques with the Revoltech and the amazing Yamaguchi figures. I mean, you have in a lot of those characters, you have articulated hair and shoulder pads and things that you got to move out of the way to get things to move. Otherwise, going back to Jay, I've watched enough of his videos on the Revoltech figures where my kind of brain hurts after after watching the video.
Yeah, but it's kind of like genres. I really think that toys kind of needs to. Well, I hope that it'll start to kind of develop as sort of. I mean, I don't know if it sounds pretentious to call it like an art form, but to the point where we can kind of have more words to kind of talk about the different sort of genres and types and ideas that are kind of being put forward with a toy or an action figure. So I don't think it's there's any ideal amount of articulation. Everything that I said before about what's fun to me is definitely a personal preference. But there's a whole genre out there of hyperposable figures that works for that, for what they're going for.
Yeah, I mean it's all subjective. It's because there are things even Dave and I we've been collecting for a very long time and talking about toys for a very long time, and there are things that like we still don't see eye to eye on. Like for me, like a double jointed elbow and some sort of ankle pivot is like necessary. But then like there are tons of figures out there that don't have double jointed elbows and don't have ankle pivot that are
Yeah, I
just
mean,
fine.
yeah, and that to me, like, it's nice when it's there, but it doesn't necessarily, need. It's not something that makes or breaks a figure for me.
Yeah, again, I think there's definitely different kind of, again, sort of genres to this, and I think that once we kind of, hopefully eventually we have more terminology and terms to be able to talk about it a little more clearly. But again, I think that not all toys are meant to be actively played with. Some of them are meant for just toy photography or keeping on a shelf, and others are meant to be put through the paces.
Buried in the sand and put frozen in a block of ice in the freezer, because
Yeah,
we all
like
did that with our
whatever
GI
equates.
Joes.
Yeah, whatever equates to whatever fun is, like your idea of it. If it's to have something on the desk and just kind of stay there as you've kind of set it, that's cool. If it's, something you've taken out in the snow and taken pictures with, if it's something that you've.
I feel like you're calling me out with the Razor Crest on that one.
No, I'm just that's or taken into different environments. Like, think of like, into the dirt or into the desert or wherever, your locale is.
Hmm.
I just say snow because we have it here. Um, that's, or if you just kind of sit there and, use laundry baskets as like shelves for them to jump off to attack other figures, like, and have, some sort of play element, like that's the answer. And that's what they're good at and they're there for. But as long as you can have that level, like that's the important thing.
Yeah, and there's different types of enjoyment you can get from it. For example, sometimes it's really enjoyable to have a figure that looks exactly like the actor or something. And then sometimes it's fun to have a representation of that that's a little bit more, toyetic or something like that sometimes gets used. Like what the Ninja Turtles were to the Ninja Turtles show. Like I really like the fact that those action figures had a lot more muscle and a lot more, were a little more aggressive than the show was. I don't think the show would be better if it were more like the toy, and I don't think the toy would be better if it was more like the show. So there's kind of different ideas that can also be portrayed through the toy, and more than just articulation. There's also, heft, like how heavy is it? How solid does it feel? Again, there's a lot of like small decisions that more than anything, I realized it while going through the process, that kind of deciding, making these decisions, a lot of them were based on kind of what is the end goal and the end objective of what, you know, the kind of figures genre is. The same way there's, 5 points of articulation is totally valid as well.
Yeah, I love the idea of talking about figures as genres, and the idea of kind of developing a specific set of terminology, the way that we would ascribe to film or music, or frankly even just art itself, right? Like the different periods of art, and the different types of art, pointillism, watercolor, oil paintings, all that stuff. The idea of developing a terminology for toys and collectibles, I like that. That's really cool.
Yeah, but again, I consider being some resistance to it because people think, toys are either for kids or they think it's just something that's fun, so they don't want to like intellectualize it or something. But at the same time, we're walking a line where we're saying toys aren't just for kids, but we also don't want to over define it. So I think hopefully it'll come eventually. Kind of happen with comic books. I think it'll eventually come around with toys, but that's kind of a personal theory. We'll see.
So, Ricky, with that, before we let you go for the evening, can you remind everyone where can we find out more about Plunderlings on the internet?
The best place to keep up with Plunderlings news is signing up for our mailing list on Plunderlings.com, or following us on Instagram. I'm hoping to be more active on Facebook and Twitter as well. But those are the best places to kind of keep up to date, and hopefully we'll have some big news soon about the Kickstarter.
Yep, and as soon as that news comes out, we'll be sharing it, and we'll put links in this episode's description as you're listening to this, so that way you can follow Plunderlings on Instagram, and we'll put a link to the website.
Thank you so much,
Ricky. Thank you so much for taking the time to be with us tonight. We're super excited for what's next in the world of Plunderlings, and we can't wait for that Kickstarter to launch.
Yeah, it's gonna be fun. Thank you, Ricky.
No, thank you guys. I appreciate it.
Thank you, dear listener, for hanging out with us today. Subscribe, rate, and review us wherever you listen, and then tell your friends to do it. Thanks also to Joe Azari, the golden voice behind our intro. Our music is Game Boy Horror by the Zombie Dandies. Find more about them both in our show notes.
Follow us on social media at AIC_podcast on Instagram and Twitter. Stop by and say hi, show us your toy hauls, and share your toy stories. Maybe we'll talk about it in a future episode.
Don't try this at home. Void where prohibited and some assembly required. Each sold separately, not a flying toy. Consult a physician if your toy run exceeds more than 4 hours.
This has been a non-productive media presentation. Executive producer Frank Hablawi. This program and many others like it on the Non-Productive Network is distributed under a Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial No Derivatives license. Please share it, but ask before trying to change it or sell it. For more information, visit non-productive.com.